also with queer characters. Literally, I think all of these books have queer characters. I could probably just stop saying that. What's up everyone, my name is Kelsey, welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about my anticipated releases for January through June of 2020. This is not a complete list. I have a full shelf on Goodreads of anticipated reads that I just add to randomly when I see books that catch my interest. So if you're interested in that, I'll link it down below. These videos stress me out a little bit. I've only made one other anticipated reads video, and it's like I have so many on this shelf, so I go through them all and pick out the ones that I'm most excited for, but I know I don't have all of the good books that are going to come out in the next 6 months. And as soon as I finish this video, I'm going to like watch someone else's anticipated reads and have like 10 more books to add to this list. So, but there's only so much time. There's only so much time I can spend on one video. So let's just jump in to the books. Oh, I've also put individual links, Goodreads links for all of the books I mentioned in the description box, so you can just easily click over and add them to your lists. First, a couple books that I've already read because I got ARCs, but if I hadn't already read them, they would have been on my anticipated list, so I think they're worth mentioning. First is The Electric Air by Victoria Lee. This releases March 17th. It's the second book in the Fever Week duology. The first book is The Fever King. This is a young adult sci-fi dystopian with a bunch of queer characters. So because this is a sequel, I can't tell you too much about the plot, but it's in the same world, set 6 months after the events of The Fever King, and The Fever King is about a world 100 years in the future after a disease has wiped out much of the population, but the people that survive this disease come back with magical abilities, and the after effects of all these tragedies has resulted in a fractured United States. There are different territories now, so this book has a lot to do with the political struggles of this one area. It follows Gnome, the main character, who survived this disease and now has magical powers. He was a refugee though, and as we know, refugees are kind of treated like shit. So after he has these abilities, he's forced to work for the government that has been oppressing him. Super good. I gave The Electric Air 5 stars. I only gave The Fever King 4 stars, and I thought The Electric Air was even better. And we get a second perspective, Dara. It goes really deep into themes of abuse and abuse of power and addiction and survival. So yeah, definitely recommend that one. The second one I've already read is Ruthless Gods by Emily A. Duncan. This one releases April 7th. It's the second book in the Something Dark and Holy trilogy. The first book is Wicked Saints. It's a young adult fantasy with a lot of horror elements, especially in the second book, and again, a bunch of queer characters. I won't go into too much detail, but it's set in a sort of like Slavic-inspired world where there is a young girl who can speak to the gods and a prince of another nation that uses blood magic, and there's a third character that you shouldn't know too much about going in. So that's all I'm saying. I gave this 5 stars. It's not like a literary masterpiece, but it is it's such a good time. And all of the characters make terrible decisions, and I really enjoy that. In book 2, Nadia gets a lot more character development, and there's also a lot more horror stuff in book 2. Lots of like gross eye stuff and a lot of blood in both of these books. So on to the books I haven't read. First, Bonds of Brass by Emily Skresky. This releases April 7th. It's a young adult fantasy. Wait, it's a young adult sci-fi, kind of dystopian, also with queer characters. Literally, I think all of these books have queer characters. I could probably just stop saying that, but both of the main characters in this book are bisexual boys. I read 2 of Emily Skresky's other books, Hall Metal Girls, which I liked, and The Abyss Surrounds Us, which I loved. So I'm really excited to see more from her. This book is about Etienne, whose life, I'm just gonna read what I wrote down here, whose life was changed forever when the Umber Empire attacked 7 years ago, but since then has become a top pilot at the Umber Military Academy and made a best friend, possibly more, also roommate situation in Gale, or Gal, I don't know how to say it. But an assassination attempt reveals that Gal is the heir to the Umber Empire. Etienne rescues him and they flee the academy together, but Etienne is torn between helping Gal survive and taking over this empire, or joining the rebellion against an empire that ruined his life. That just sounds great to me. And I have an arc of this and I can't wait to read it, so I'll probably read that in January. Next is Docile by K.M. Spara. This releases March 3rd. It's an adult sci-fi dystopian, again, more queer characters again. This is set in a future world where people sell themselves in order to pay off debts. So they're basically servants to, you know, rich people. Doesn't sound that different from now, but okay. And I think that's a pretty big theme of this book. One of the phrases that keeps going around about it is there is no consent under capitalism. Very eat the rich, you know? But it's also a romance. The book follows Alicia, who is a man that becomes a docile in order to pay off his parents' debt. His mother's life was ruined after she became a docile and became addicted to the drugs that these people take in order to deal with their time in service. I mean, it's getting tons of hype. A bunch of people have read it and said they loved it. My only concern for this book is that I know a lot of people have talked about it being like sexy and kinky, and I just don't really care about gratuitous flowery sex scenes in books. I'm asexual. They don't bother me, I just don't care. So I tend to skim through them, but I have read some of this author's like short works, and I think all of his sex scenes have an intention other than just being sexy, and that's what really works for me. So I have high hopes. Next is Witches of Ash and Ruin by E. Latimer. This releases March 3rd. It's a young adult fantasy with some horror elements, more queer characters. The main character is a bi girl with OCD, and it basically follows a 17-year-old girl who is looking forward to becoming finally a full-fledged witch, but before that can happen, another coven moves into their city or town or whatever, and they're rumored to have a history with dark magic, and Dana immediately has issues with Minor King, who is the daughter of the leader of this coven. I assume this is going to become a romantic situation. That's the vibe I got from the description, but a witch turns up dead along with the symbol of like a long ago serial killer. So there's also a mystery element, there's also mythology in this book, and witches and gods, and that just sounds like a damn good time. Next is Upright Women Wanted by Sarah Gailey. This releases February 4th. It's an adult Western, I think sci-fi, like an alternate world situation. And I also think this is a novella, so it shouldn't be too long. There's also queer characters. I've heard this described as queer feminist lady librarians on horseback. Basically, this is about Esther, who is running away from home to escape an arranged marriage set up by her father to a man. Or meets up with like a whole group of women that are part of a resistance, and she's also dealing with the fact that her best friend was executed for distributing resistance propaganda. It just sounds really interesting. I've never heard of anything like this. I don't usually read Westerns, so who knows, maybe there is something out there, but I doubt it. I doubt Westerns are full of queer female characters. Next is Cemetary Boys by Aiden Thomas. This comes out June 9th. It's a young adult fantasy with queer characters. The main character is a trans boy, and there's a male-male relationship in this book. Yadriel is a Brujo, and he has summoned a ghost, but it's the wrong ghost, and now he can't get rid of him. The ghost is determined to find out who murdered him and enlists Yadriel's help to figure it out. I think it's a romance. I'll be very sad if it doesn't end happily, but Aiden Thomas has promised that he won't leave us disappointed. So, high hopes. Next is, I keep saying next, but these aren't in any particular order. But the next one on my list is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This releases March 17th. It's an adult fantasy, again, with the queer characters, the main character. There's a male-male relationship. I think this is sort of an alternate, like, magical realism kind of setting. So our main character, Linus Baker, is a caseworker at the Department of Magical Youth. So he basically checks in on magical children in orphanages. He's given a special assignment to go to this magical house on the sea where there are 6 children, and he's in charge of determining if they're so dangerous that they'll bring about the end of the world, and if they are, he has to report back so they can be taken care of. Next is Scavenge the Stars by Tara Sim. This releases January 7th. It's a young adult fantasy with a bi main character, but I think this is a male-female ship. That's what I've heard. Or maybe there's no ship. I can't remember now. Either way, the main character is bi. So, Amaya works on a debtor ship to pay off her debts, and she's been held captive there for years. One day she saves a mysterious stranger from drowning, and this mysterious stranger rewards her with riches. After she returns home, Amaya wants revenge on the man that ruined her and her family's lives, and quickly becomes like entangled in a web of like lies and deception. I've heard this main character is very stabby, and I have a weakness for stabby female characters. Next is The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood. This releases February 11th. It's an adult fantasy. More queer characters. This is a quick description. Definitely one of those fantasies where like this description is just giving us our beginning, and then like all the shit's gonna take off from there, it feels like. So Sorway, I think that's how you say it, is destined to sacrifice her life, but on the day of her death, a powerful mage offers her a new fate: leave with him and live, turn away from her destiny and her god to become a thief, a spy, and an assassin, the wizard's loyal sword. Sounds interesting to me. Next, Felix Ever After by Kaysen Calendar. This releases May 12th. It's a young adult contemporary. I think this is the only contemporary on this list. Main character is a trans boy. It's a like I feel like most young adult contemporaries that I'm interested in is a coming of age kind of inspiration and also a bit of a love story. I'm just going to read this because it's kind of a complicated plot. Felix desperately wants to know what falling in love is like and why it seems so easy for everyone but him to find someone. What's worse than that, even though he is proud of his identity, Felix also secretly fears that he's one marginalization too many, black, queer, and transgender, to ever get his own happily ever after. When an anonymous student begins sending him transphobic messages after publicly posting Felix's dead name alongside images of him before he transitioned, Felix comes up with a plan for revenge, what he didn't count on, his catfish scenario landing him in a quasi-love triangle. But as he navigates his complicated feelings, Felix begins a journey of questioning and self-discovery that helps redefine his most important relationship, how he feels about himself. That sounds good. Next is Homie by Danez Smith. This releases January 21st. It's an adult poetry book. I read their first book, Don't Call Us Dead, this year, and I really enjoyed it. Very powerful, kind of sad, and I think this book is going to focus on some similar themes about being black, queer, non-binary, and HIV positive, but also more themes of friendship, which were kind of present in Don't Call Us Dead, but I think this book is going to focus on that a lot more, thus the name Homie. Next, The Unconquered City by K.A. Dorr. This releases June 16th. It's an adult fantasy, more queer characters. I actually can't read the synopsis for this one yet because I just read the first book, which is The Perfect Assassin, and the second book is on my Christmas list, so I haven't actually read it yet, but that is The Impossible Contract. So this third book will follow from there. But I really enjoyed The Perfect Assassin. I have a great feeling about The Impossible Contract, so it's on my list. The first book, The Perfect Assassin, follows our main character after he finally passes his assassin training, but then immediately questions whether or not he actually wants to kill anybody. And at that time, a powerful person in the city turns up dead, and he is put in charge of figuring out the mystery. Otherwise, this group of assassins will be disbanded. It was just really good, like solid book. It's going to be in my wrap-up, so that's not going to be out for like 2 more weeks. And the last book on this list, and this is one I just heard about, so I hope I don't hear anything shitty about it. It is Fragile Remedy by Maria Ingrate Mora. This releases June 16th. It's a young adult sci-fi, dystopian, more queer characters, and I think there's a male-male ship. 16-year-old Nate is a gem, genetically engineered medi-tissue created by the scientists of Gothos City as a cure for the elite from the fatal lung rot ravaging the population. So that right there gives me, there's a movie where they have clones of people, The Island I think it's called, where they just like raise up clones of rich people to be like, just in case I need an organ. So it kind of gives me that vibe. As a child, he was smuggled out of the laboratory where he was held captive and into the Withers, a quarantined, lawless region. Nate manages to survive by using his engineering skills to become a tinker, fixing broken tech in exchange for food or a safe place to sleep. When he meets Reed, a kind and fiercely protective boy that makes his heart race, and his misfit gang of scavengers, Nate finds the family he's always longed for, even if he can't risk telling them what he is. But Gothos created a genetic fail-safe in their gems, a flaw that causes their health to rapidly deteriorate as they age unless they are regularly dosed with medication controlled by Gothos City. As Nate's health declines, his hard-won freedom is put in jeopardy. Violence erupts across the Withers, his illegal supply of medicine is cut off, and a vicious attack on Reed threatens to expose his secret. With time running out, Nate is left with only 2 options: work for a shadowy terrorist organization that has the means to keep him alive, or stay and die with the boy he loves. So this sounds like some classic young adult dystopian, like the 2012 kind, but with queer characters. And I think that's promising, so hopefully that's good. Okay, those are all the books I have that I'm talking about today. Like I said, I have a whole list. I'll link it down below, and I'm going to keep adding things. Everybody else is coming out with their anticipated releases videos, so I'm sure I'm going to add a bunch of shit to that list now. I post book-related videos every Wednesday, so if you want to see more, subscribe. If you like this video, hit like. If you want to keep talking, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram at Kelsey Reads, or Goodreads at Kelsey Lynn Reads. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.